In this video, we'll be delving into an important and often misunderstood aspect of global history: why Black Africans were historically viewed as a threat. This topic touches on history, culture, politics, and economics, so buckle up for a deep and insightful journey. But before we do so, you are welcome back to this channel. If you are new here, consider subscribing. Don't forget to turn on post notification because that will notify you whenever we drop new content on this channel. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and share. So, Africa has long been considered the cradle of humanity, a continent rich in diversity, culture, and natural resources. Yet, throughout history, Black Africans have often been viewed with suspicion, fear, or outright hostility by other societies. To understand why this is the case, we must first trace the historical interactions between Africa and the rest of the world. So, in ancient times, African civilizations were highly advanced. Egypt, Nubia, Carthage, and the Kingdom of Ascom were flourishing hubs of trade, science, and culture. These societies were seen as equals or even superiors by many neighboring civilizations. However, as global dynamics shifted, perception of Africa and its people began to change. The rise of European empires marked the beginning of significant changes in how Black Africans were viewed. In the 15th and 16th centuries, European explorers ventured into Africa, driven by the search for gold, spices, and new trade routes. At first, Africans were respected for their knowledge of their land and their advanced trading networks. But as the transatlantic slave trade took root, the narrative began to shift. Africans were no longer seen as partners in trade, but as commodities to be exploited. The dehumanization of Black Africans became essential for justifying the brutal realities of slavery. Europeans spread propaganda portraying Africans as primitive, uncivilized, and dangerous, characteristics that made them easy to subjugate in the eyes of the world. Religion also played a significant role in shaping this perception. During the era of European colonization, Christianity was used as a tool to justify the exploitation of African people. Black Africans were often depicted as pagans who needed to be saved through conversion to Christianity. This religious justification for colonization further perpetuated the idea that Black Africans were fundamentally different and, by extension, a threat to the moral and social order of the colonizers. The idea of a civilizing mission became central to the colonial enterprise, allowing European powers to dominate African societies while presenting themselves as benevolent forces of progress. The fear of African power and resistance has also been a recurring theme throughout history. During the colonial era, African uprisings against European powers were frequent, from the Zulu Wars in Southern Africa to the resistance movements in West Africa. Africans repeatedly demonstrated their unwillingness to submit to foreign domination. These acts of resistance were often met with brutal suppression, further entrenching the idea that Africans were a threat. European governments and media painted African resistance fighters as violent and barbaric, ignoring the legitimate grievances and aspirations behind their actions. The Industrial Revolution brought another layer of complexity to the perception of Black Africans. As European nations industrialized, they increasingly sought raw materials to fuel their factories. Africa, with its vast reserves of minerals and other resources, became a prime target. However, the industrialization process also exacerbated racial hierarchies. Pseudo-scientific theories of race began to gain traction, with many Europeans arguing that Africans were biologically inferior. These theories provided a convenient excuse for the exploitation of African labor and resources while framing Africans as a threat to European economic and social stability. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, the colonization of Africa reached its peak. The infamous Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 saw European powers carve up the continent without any regard for the existing ethnic or political boundaries. The resulting scramble for Africa not only devastated local economies and societies, but also reinforced the idea of Africans as a people to be dominated and controlled. This period also saw the rise of colonial propaganda, which portrayed Africans as backward and uncultured. These depictions were used to justify the oppressive systems of colonial rule and to instill a sense of fear among Europeans about the potential for African rebellion. and the legacy of slavery and colonization had far-reaching effects on how Black Africans were viewed even after these systems were dismantled. In the United States, for example, the descendants of enslaved Africans faced systemic racism and discrimination. Jim Crow laws and segregation reinforced the idea that Black people were inherently different and dangerous. Similar patterns could be seen in Europe, where African immigrants and their descendants were often marginalized and viewed with suspicion. The fear of Black Africans as a cultural and economic threat persisted even as African nations began to gain independence in the mid-20th century. The struggle for civil rights and decolonization in the 20th century further highlighted the fears and prejudices surrounding Black Africans. Leaders like Nelson Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, and Patrice Lumumba challenged the global status quo, demanding equality and justice for their people. While these movements were largely peaceful, they were often met with hostility and resistance from former colonial powers and their allies. The idea of empowered Black Africans challenging global systems of oppression was seen as a threat to the established order. In the modern era, the perception of Black Africans as a threat continues to manifest in various ways. Immigration debates in Europe and the United States often center on fears of African migrants taking jobs or changing cultural norms. Similarly, global discussions about economic development frequently portray Africa as a continent in need of saving rather than a partner in progress. These narratives are deeply rooted in the historical dynamics we've explored. They reflect a lingering fear of Black African power, resilience, and potential, a fear that has been cultivated over centuries of exploitations and dehumanization. So, what can we learn from this history? First, it's important to recognize the role of systemic racism in shaping global perceptions of Black Africans. These perceptions did not arise in a vacuum, but were deliberately constructed to justify systems of exploitation and oppression. Second, we must challenge these narratives by celebrating the achievements and contributions of Black Africans throughout history, from the ancient civilization of Egypt and Mali to the modern innovations of African scientists and entrepreneurs. Africa's story is one of resilience, creativity, and strength. And as we wrap up this video, let's remember that understanding history is the first step toward building a more equitable future. By acknowledging the roots of these harmful perceptions, we can begin to dismantle them and create a world where all people are valued and respected. So thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below and stay tuned for more deep dives into history and culture. See you next time. Bye.